He's got all these, what peptides this and GLPs that, and he's fighting everything he can. When we first start out, this is the Real Money Pros, and happy weekend to you. Alexander Lundgren there. I am Brian Wiley, financial advisors, fiduciary only, and live right here on Saturdays. You can catch the Real Money Pros. Go to therealmoneypros.com. You want to learn more about us, see some great material, go there, learn about the Better Bucket system. That's us. That's what we do. But we also live in the same world you do, which means that
You mean the getting older world?
Get a little bit older over time. But I get to reminisce and go back in time. It's funny, I bought the entire season of Friends not long ago, and it was just like hundreds of episodes. I don't even know. We've been starting to do some fun research on how these actors have all turned out, some of them great, and how they had their contract disputes and how much money they were making. Did you know they were making $1 million per episode in their last 2 seasons?
Because it was big news, because that's the most anybody ever paid.
$1 million.
I remember that. Yeah,
each.
I do remember that.
Each. And they
Per
had
episode.
they had the collective agreement, the whole bit where they just divided it up, because otherwise it could have been like iCarly, which it turns out that little girl was making $180,000 an episode, but her co-star less than 50. But
Who was in the show just as much. It just wasn't called her name. Yeah.
Either way, reminiscing a little bit about what it's just kind of like to have to start out. And can you imagine getting out of college now or landing a big job, and you're kind of out on your own and you're having to figure this out for the first time? I mean, you start your life out with unlimited money supplies from your parents. It's like money came out from these little paper checks, and then you realize it was now they just tap their phones. It's like,
but they did tell us it didn't grow on trees. So I knew that.
Only because there was like red and different colors inside those bills, I knew that did not look natural. So I knew I didn't trust
mine always told me that money didn't grow on trees.
So then you find out when you finally get out on your own that you have this lavish lifestyle. You have lived all your life with this Gucci type of a buying habit where you just spend to finally saying, well, wait, I got to earn my own money now. It's tight. So then you got to figure out the tax system and things like that. My son is no different. He's a great guy. Really dig this kid. I've got a great story I could love to tell about him, but I need to clear it with him first before I just go start talking about him on the air. But Cooper, 23 years old, graduates from college, Boise State. He's now got to get out in the real world and kind of balance all the finances because, he was in college. So just some money's loaned, some money's help from parents, some money's earned. And so now he's got a complicated tax return. So we started to go through it a couple weeks ago. And we had some questions for him that he needed the research, so we stopped when we basically told him about the disappointment of he should file the Schedule C to go along with his self-employment income. He was afraid about how much money he had owed in taxes, and luckily we had found an error. We're able to correct it, but it was after the show was done and we had to do all this stuff so nobody found out the result. His tax liability went from roughly $1,800 down to, I think he said somewhere around half that, $800. But the question still has to go from him, which is, hey, I learned about the standard deduction. Like I'm allowed to make an X amount of money each year, which I think the number now is $17,000. And anything, if I don't make, at least that, I don't owe any tax, but he still had a tax bill. Right. Alexander Lundgren is our, not only a financial advisor, fiduciary, but also a certified Social Security analyst. Is that right?
Pretty close. Registered Social Security.
Registered, dang it.
RSSA.
So if you've got questions regarding Social Security, like my son does now, which is why was I taxed on that, even though I really should have owed no income tax, call the program 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. It's a live program. It's the weekend. We're going to talk about Iran, the markets, all of that, but most importantly, your calls. So what is it about that tax? What do you get hit with?
So on that self-employed income, he basically got hit with 15% for the Social Security and the Medicare tax. Everybody gets to pay that up to a certain income limit, and then the Social Security drops off, but the Medicare doesn't. But typically, if you're an employee receiving a W-2, you pay 7.5%, and your employer pays 7.5% that you don't see, but they do pay. You only see 7.5% out of your paycheck. When you're self-employed, you get to pay both sides. So they call that the self-employment tax. Is that other 7.5% that comes out to 15%?
7 0.65, something stupid, because I just remember learning about that when I became self-employed too. So now he's learned about it and he's got to pay it. And that tax doesn't go away. It's got no minimums, but it does have a maximum. Yeah. And the maximum is once you've earned so much money on your W-2 paycheck or through your 1099 income that you're not subject to the Social Security portion of the tax after you hit that limit. Do you know the limit?
I'm checking. It goes up every year.
Yeah, it does. It's a moving target. I think it's roughly like 170. Is that about right? Now, this is counterintuitive.
184,500 for 2026.
Who of you out there listening is concerned about that type of stuff right there, which is you've got a Social Security trust fund that we hear in the news constantly. It's out of money. It is
not yet.
I know. It's running out of money. If
it really was out of money, they'd do something about it.
Exactly. So apparently we just had the U.S. government basically make comments about how we're insolvent. And so when are we going to hear it about the Social Security system? And then what are your concerns about it? Will you share that with us here on the program? You can go to therealmoneypros.com. You can text our phone line. We just found this out recently, although we've got to figure out when you text it and how to respond to it. But we do know that we can receive texts and we can read them. So it's kind of a one-way communication. Send your messages there if you'd like, or call the program at 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. But you think about this Social Security system, which is then it's a trust. It's the way it works. And it's the idea of it was that employers and employees were both going to participate in a social pension system, which was a socialized system. It's all there is to it. And the idea was it's going to allow the older workforce to be able to have income, basic income, if they need to or when they need to leave the workforce. So kind of encouragement, but also ensuring that people who have worn their bodies out don't also wear out their finances and become worse of a financial problem for society. So that was kind of the theory.
Well, and I think also what came into it a couple of years later was the surviving spouse benefit too.
Okay, that's where I start to have problems with this. Here and there.
In that era, it was really important.
Well, in that era
in
this era, it's still important. In fact, the whole idea. So my ex-wife and I, we had decided right when she got pregnant that only one person was going to work. Logically, It should have been her because she actually earned more money. But for some reason, I just didn't feel like I had the components to be the best parent for an infant. And she decided to stay home. Like, it was really important for us to try to have a stay-at-home parent. And that was the reason why you could pay into it and basically get a 2-for-1 program.
But back when they originally started it, even if it was just a surviving mom, even if she did work, she would never have earned enough to support the family.
Exactly. And I don't have a problem with that at all.
That's not necessarily the case now.
Let's go back to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is that there's a guarantee on income to a worker. Mm-hmm. And the system has to have enough money in it to make good on that guarantee. And so over time, we saw the increase in the amount that needed to be deducted from the employee's paycheck, both on the employer side and the employee side. So that 15.3% hasn't always been 15.3%. In fact, it started out as 1% on each side, I believe.
Yeah, well, and it truly is run like a pension system. If you have a state pension, you pay into it and your employer pays into it. If you work for a private or public company that still has a pension, you have a mandatory contribution, as do they. And it runs through all kinds of tests every year to make sure that it's fully funded.
Nobody objects.
It can do it. And everybody's good with that, and everybody wishes they had one. Well, this is exactly how Social Security is set up, except for making sure it's fully funded every year.
Or that the rules don't exhaust it, or now new allowances, and see, that's the problem. You can't sit there and increase the payments going out when you can't even afford the payments that are currently going out. So you've got to bring in more money, and that's why we saw the creep. If you think about that, it going from 1% for the employee all the way up to 7 and some percent for the employee. It's gone up 700% since the invention of the Social Security system. So who of you is concerned about it? Who of you has questions about it? Everybody should. If you're approaching retirement, you better be thinking about this because there's some real planning that should be done. And Alex she's the expert. 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. This is Real Money Pros. I'm Brian Wiley. That's Alexander Lundgren. We are here to answer your questions. We're going to get back into the Social Security system. And as much as I'm going to complain about it, we've got to still talk about how to work with it. Because even though it will be exhausted of its I guess, funds to be able to make good on its current payments, something's going to happen. But what do you think it'll be? This is Real Money Pros. Make this year that you work smarter, not harder with Ataraxis. As your strategic partner, Ataraxis becomes an extension of your business, taking the burden of 8 financial program here on the weekends so you're catching it with your station. That means you can also call the program 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. What do we bring to you? We bring to you fiduciary level advice right here on the air. And we're here for you. That's the entire purpose of this program. Sponsor supported. Alex, me, we've got Nick, Cooper, or not Cooper, everybody but Cooper, Alec. We've got a team of advisors that are here to help you. Everybody is, we will answer emails, the whole bit. Sponsor supported, but we do work as financial advisors during the week. So how do we do that? Well, we work with the Pollen Wealth Management. Pollen Wealth Management creates a great network of advisors, experts, a team of behind-the-scenes people that can help us work out issues, especially when we're working on titles and tax issues and transfers and management, all of that. It can get so complicated that we actually cloud the fact that we've got to make sure that the client is the priority. Well, it's the same thing here on the air. That's what you get because we're still a Pollen advisors. 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. I'm Brian Wiley with Alexander Lundgren.
Well, and when people come to us, they really have one concern, one thing. Regardless of what the questions are, regardless of what items we come in, and do and take care of them for them, the question is, am I going to be alive and my money's all gone? I don't want to run out of money. How do I make that happen?
It's kind of interesting because we live in a town where Micron has heavy presence, and a lot of people here. About 16, 17 years ago, I remember talking to somebody when Micron stock was at $6.
Mm-hmm.
$6, $4, $6. It went down to $3.
I remember all that.
I bet you do.
Because I was here.
And you have a connection to that company as well through your husband.
Yeah.
And so I remember having a conversation with somebody. It made it all the way back up to $10, $12, and they were just stoked. They said, what do we do about this? And I said, well, I mean, ideally you'll set a target. Like give yourself a price target, or there's got to be a purpose for you to own it. And it wasn't long after that, we were at another football game, and she's like, it's at $20. Like basically, you're wrong, Brian. You're the radio guy. You're the financial advisor, but you're wrong. If I would have sold it at 16 or 18, because those were the examples I were giving her at the time. Because I was asking her, I said, here's the way that you could look at it. If you were to buy or own the stock at $6, and I told you that, hey, in a year or 2 years or 5 years from now, it's going to be double that amount, would you buy and own the stock? And they said, yeah, I would. Like, wow, it's going to double 5 years. That sounds all right. That's a decent rate of return. But let's imagine the doubling happened next month.
It's still doubled.
Okay. The question is what was the goal? Was double then get out? Like you were going to do that? Okay. The problem with this is that you could look at the momentum. So Micron's a great example of it. Back then, they were really struggling with competing against companies like Hynix and Samsung and TSM, and they were making memory chips. And finally, Micron starts to restructure, new CEOs and things like that. And they come around the corner, and the stock is growing. So now let's imagine you hit your targets, and you see it, and you're like, well, wait, the momentum alone is enough reason to stay in it. So you stay in it, but now what's operating? Either
greed.
You've got to sit down and look at your plan, because you have to take and you say, okay, if I were to liquidate the stock right now, would I buy it again at this price? And then what's my next target?
Right.
If you take that approach, what you're becoming is a systematic investor, because here's the problem. Micron stock right now is not at $6, $8,
oh my
$10.
Gosh, it's insane.
It's, next level is insane. Last year was
people who wouldn't buy it at $30 and $40 are wanting to buy it right now.
It's at $496 a share.
People who've never owned it in their life because it was too volatile.
Here's the issue, Alex. That was 17 years ago. I know so many Micron employees that own the stock at that price. It's at $496. If they still own the stock at that price, my question is, hey, great.
And some
What's
do.
your plan? What's your plan? Later in the program at some point, we're going to talk about highly appreciated stock and what you can do if you're just resistant to selling it or hesitant or you still believe in it moving forward. But let's talk about that here on the Real Money Pros, because That same thing right there, that greed, what works to the opposite of that is fear. And the fear of retirement is not reasonable, just like holding on to a stock, thinking, saying, like, at what point?
Yeah. At what point is it enough money and gain?
Yeah.
And then when you hit that point, now you're worried about taxes. So you still don't want to sell it.
So we're talking about Social Security. We're talking about the Social Security Trust, how it's basically running out of money. And as it's running out of money, we have to look at the reasons of why. The primary reason for why is that because too much money is paid out for the amount of money that is sitting there, earning the amount of money or the rate that it's earning to be able to sustain.
Correct.
Okay. The problem itself isn't the program. The problem is because we have voters along the growth of the program putting pressure on Congress to make changes on the program, trying to balance perception and money going in. And they've got special interests everywhere to the point where they've created a system that cannot continue to function in its current form. However, somebody called the program last week. He says, what's the likelihood do you think that we're going to see the Social Security system completely fail and not make its payments? And I say it's next to nothing, because the more money it continues to pay, the more important it is to the people who are receiving it, which means as long as they have the ability to vote, whether they need an ID or not, it doesn't matter, because they will, in fact, vote for whichever representative represents their special interest of receiving their current interest or their current payments, which means you simply
they're going to find a way.
You're going to have to tax the working crowd more if you don't fix the investment problem inside of it.
And keep in mind that not only is it Social Security, but in that same wrapper is disability and Medicare. They are all under those same wrappers. So if Social Security goes, so do those. It's all same package.
So what is the fix for it? Now, we've talked about the Better Buckets program that we have here at the Real Money Pros, and it's just our twist on a very simplified visual way to look at how to make a goal-based plan where you start with, here's what I want, when I want it, how much it's going to cost. And then we do the second step that a lot of financial advisors either choose one, goal-based planning, or you're going to do income based model planning, where you're looking at how to do cash flow planning for the clients. And so flowing that type of money through has to be done visually so people will understand when do they move money, how do they move it, because it also answers the question on how should I own that stock? That's
right.
Highly appreciated. The question is what bucket does it belong in?
Right.
If it belongs in that long-term bucket where I don't need it, so now let's go back to that employee that owned it 13 years ago, but they know they're going to work with the company for another 20 years.
Yeah.
Then they could make a reasonable argument of, well, it's part of my growth bucket. However, the reason falls apart when we start to look at sensible investing, where we have to add in the boring old concept of diversification.
Yes.
That's when we start to thin it out. But could you maybe look at, well, maybe I can still just be a little overexposed to the industry, or maybe I can buy something that is not that company but supplies that company something or is important to that company. I started digging in deeper just this last week, and I had a friend reach out to me just yesterday, and he thinks I'm a genius, although I'm not. On Thursday, I was just reading an article about Taiwan Semiconductor and how they supply chips to NVIDIA and Intel and how important they are to the American chip manufacturing market and the AI industry. And I thought, there you go. It's alternatives like that. Micron needs Taiwan Semiconductor, and they've got some synergies there. So why not spread it out? There's an idea for diversification where we could do the same thing with the Social Security Trust Fund.
Absolutely.
This is the Real Money Pros. We'll be right back.
Apollon Wealth Management has transformed the way our team delivers financial advice. With their support, we're more equipped and more empowered than ever to provide top-tier financial planning, investment management.
Goodness, here I'm Brian Wiley, fiduciary financial advisors, meaning we're not earning commissions, although we should. I can talk about that later. But we're not. We
don't.
We actually charge our clients a fee. It's either hour-based, flat fee, like we're going to look at the job.
For a project, yeah.
For a project. We almost always mess up pricing those. We either go back to the clients and ask for more money, or we sit there wondering why we didn't ask for more money. We usually work a lot more. But then other than that, most advisors who work on the fiduciary type of contract with their clients are doing it based on the amount of money that they're helping the client manage, or they are actively managing on the behalf of the client.
Right.
That's where we bring in the term discretion.
Yeah. And the average is a range. There was a study by Kitsis, who you'll know, but general public doesn't, that interviewed a bunch of advisors. And the range was between 0.5% to 3%.
Dang.
So, and a lot of that actually depends how much you have on deposit with the advisor, because you've got one set of planning for this thing of money. So if we're doing planning on money, we have discretion, right? Which is that the ability to make decisions on it without having to make a phone call every single time, because we have a plan with the client already. And so we're doing things according to that. We can better serve them as far as taking gains off the table, making sure we're being tax efficient. If they've got a pot over here and a pot over there and another advisor over there, and you want me to do the planning on all of it, I could make you the best plan ever, and some other advisor could blow it up tomorrow.
That's kind of the way it goes. The fiduciary, with discretion, should be helping the client actually make the decisions kind of on their behalf. So the whole idea is that with discretion, this is where we live. So we live in this world where the clients will transfer over their client accounts to whichever custodian we can work with and actually perform the action of trade. So we can buy, sell, decide which security, how much security, eliminate securities, whatever it's going to be, replace them. We can do it for tax reasons, distribution reasons, the whole bit. That discretion really means that you're relinquishing your day-to-day control to an advisor. But remember, as a client, you still have that control. Now, the problem with this is that sometimes you may not really understand the moves your advisor is making. And the one answer to that one is call the advisor and ask them why they did something and what they're doing, and go sit down and review the plan. Now, what ends up happening over time is, and this is the reason why we like better buckets, the whole idea of the visual approach is having a cash bucket, having an income bucket, and a growth bucket for the client is to be able to understand why some money might be invested into a risky stock, or some speculative portion of a portfolio is in that bucket and it's not over in the cash bucket for obvious reasons. Now, go back to the beginning of the program when I said my son's life seems so simple to me, but do you understand how complicated it is to enter the tax world as with self-employment income in your first get-go? Even with a finance degree, it's pretty complicated.
Well, and the tax laws aren't uncomplicated. There's bunches of them.
The pay, as you were talking about, it's kind of commensurate for it. If Cooper had $5 million to invest, he'd be the easiest client ever to work with. So you would expect lower fees to be charged. And hopefully that's going to be the case. But typically, as we get older, our lives become more complicated. You earn more income.
Yeah. And the risk actually becomes greater in that you will have less time to put the plan in place and make sure the things are going to work.
Visually, you can see then if you're going to need the money soon, you start to either uninvest it or you move it through the buckets to get where it needs to be. So when you need the money, you know it's there. Okay. When I was talking to that person 17 years ago about the Micron stock that they held, right now they are there. They are at that spot where they should have taken some action along the way to liquidate any aggressive holdings to make sure, not all of them, but eliminate the ones that are then going to disrupt their plan moving forward. Now, let's imagine you've got a plan and you've put it in there and you've got all the numbers in there and you say, I like the cash flow plan, I like the investment plan of this whole thing. You got a stock that's rising very quickly and you're thinking, well, maybe I'll just keep working and let the stock keep going up because my life is getting exponentially better as it goes up. You got to start doing something about it. Review the plan. Because you want to see what were the changes going to make to your plan. It may not be as significant as you think, or it could be so significant that at some point you need to mature through your plan and you're going to have to eliminate some of the greed, let some of it go, and become a bit more conservative in your approach, and your life could be great.
Well, because you want to harvest gains, but you don't want to get greedy because you need those gains as you're in retirement to help with the rising costs with inflation. But if you get greedy, you might miss them.
So as your life becomes more complicated, you have to mature through the planning process of it. if you find yourself to be like 55 years old and you really don't have any money saved up and you've got some equity in your home, but not much, and you're starting to notice that you can pile more money into your 401k, then thank goodness you're normal. That's exactly what happens at about 55 is you start to realize that you're starting to approach this age that things are going to become real. Because when you were 17 years ago, you weren't really thinking,
away.
30s, that would have been 38 years old, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And at 38,
raising kids.
Now you can't even imagine your kids not whining. And you still just think there's no way.
Or not you being the person who has to feed them.
So here you are. What do? Well, you start to ask questions and start to ask questions of your advisors and start to get the planning done so you can actually, because this concern about Social Security, some people say, well, I'm not even going to plan that it's going to be there. Okay, you're 55. Can you actually afford to say that $3,000 a month or whatever your payment's going to be doesn't matter? That's $36,000 a year, potentially tax-free.
With cost of living increases.
This is in today's dollars, and you're saying it doesn't matter. Okay, throw in the 50% for your spouse, so another $18,000 on top of that.
Yeah.
Okay, wait.
That's a pretty big number.
Are you telling me that people won't vote to keep a very inefficient program funded enough to continue to keep these payments to people? Even if you have extra cash, people will still feel greedy enough to make sure that it continues to pay them, even though the real solution means this is just really simple logic, in my opinion. And I have actually submitted this plan to multiple senators, congressmen. They're currently in office. We're still supposed to have this in-depth conversation. They have my analysis done on this, which is, you know what? If you just followed the basic better bucket system, this program would be better. And I proved it. It would be worth 17 times as much money right now had they started this program 40 years ago. And any 20-year period that I could dig out of this, in every single case, it was better off when it was designated within the trust, if it was designated within the trust, to have three basic buckets. One is to try to sustain the payments going out. That is an income bucket. A cash bucket to ensure the payments can go out, and then a long-term growth bucket, which is to grow with the economy as cost of living goes up over time.
Right.
We would have also not suffered a single increase in the employee side or the employer side. So when
That's
I ran
a big difference.
and I used some AI help with the whole bit, had to calculate it and cross some lines where it became most efficient, the whole bit. And it was not at the current rate of 14.3% that it was most efficient. Is it 14.3? Is that roughly? 15.3%. That's the 2 times. See, FICA tax,
and
Medicare tax, both sides of it. Instead, it was actually most efficient when it was at about 8% total, so 4% each side, money invested in 50%, as I just threw some ballpark numbers out there to try to figure it out. Half of it was in growth. And so it was to grow with the economy, and I had an index next to the S&P 500 because the S&P 500 provides about 60% or 70% of the American income that comes into American households. So it seemed fair to say that that should be the comparable, and it was worth 17 times as much as it is right now.
Okay, so I want to know what day they're going to invest half the Social Security trust.
They're not going to do it. So
Because I'm going to go buy the day before.
Here's how you actually do the Social Security management and the trust management of the actual securities, in my opinion, is you've got every state has a pension system and every state has a pension manager. And each of those states could be represented by having 50 states plus the territories sit in a room and figure out which securities need to be in which part of the portfolio. It's as simple as that. If they don't like the way that some company operates, then essentially they can apply rules to what they're willing to invest in, meaning the whole social governance, all that stuff, type of ESG funds, things like that, legislation, regulations. You can start to relax on that, saying, well, you're polluting our rivers. We're not going to buy your stuff.
Yeah.
They'll clean up because they want the stability. Companies want the stability of government investment owning their stock because the government won't liquidate the stocks willy-nilly.
Right.
Won't cause volatility. It'll cause
They won't do it
reasons for
emotionally.
stocks to, yeah, exactly. But that's too sensible. So that's the reason why that won't be the reinvestment plan of the Social Security system. But the fact is it could work that way. 979-596-6639, but that is not the way that it functions. Instead, it's inefficient. probably 14 years ago, I had clients who said that they wanted nothing to do with an Obamacare plan. They weren't going to take the subsidies. They were going to cash flow it. They were just going to politically object. And I said, okay, so you're a martyr for a system that's going to fail. Why wouldn't you just help it fail sooner and not pay all your money to be the martyr? It's the same thing with Social Security. We'll be right back.
Businesses.
And we've actually got 3 of them, so you can join us here on the program. Even if your station doesn't carry the program, you can pick us up on podcast, listen to us on the program, call us live, 979-596-6639. Jeremiah Bates isn't here, but we've got Alexandra Lundgren. I'm Brian Wiley, and we're here for you.
So between us, how many years of experience have we got sitting in this room? That's math in my head, right?
Well, I've got 26. You've got
32.
32. Wow.
So you got a question? Stump us. Try.
That's always weird to me, though, especially when companies are like, we've got 1 million years of experience.
No,
like,
we've got really good coverage of the last 30 years. We've got a couple of opinions of the last 30 years.
But, okay, is it experience if both you and I had the same experience for, let's say, 12 of those? So should we discount? So we're no longer at 46 years of experience. Or what? You said 30 what?
32.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
So 60-something years. Okay. But we're here. We see it. So when I was talking about Cooper at the beginning of the program, I was talking about how simple it is when you first start out, but it's seemingly complex. And it is complex when you really kind of clean the slate, forget about what you know now, and now just enter the system first time.
For sure. Yeah.
The 1040 easy's not so
it's
easy.
It's not even a thing anymore.
No, and I didn't, like when
Why?
I was young, we didn't have self-employment income that we needed to report.
No, none of it. Yeah, nobody got paid by a 1099 when you were 17, 20, unless you delivered papers.
So these guys got side gigs starting out at 16 now and don't realize that they've got Social Security tax to go fund a system that won't work, which, by the way, that's got to rest good on your heart, Cooper, that even that money that you had to work hard to get.
Which is why they won't let it fail, because everybody who put money into it would be up in arms, literally.
That money will not be there for you, Cooper, at the current rate. That money will not be. It's going to have to be somebody else's money. So thank you, Cooper, for your contribution for paying for the payments of the people that are receiving it. And this is the issue, because we have on the receiving side of it, that's also the most active voting block, which is people that have time. They are retirees. They research things. And thank goodness, because hopefully it's a little bit calmer crowd. Maybe we can start to calm this down a little bit and we could actually see more reasonable voting go on. But in the meantime, it's all about either save me money or pay me money. And that greed and the fear on both ends of that is what's caused the extremes that have landed us in this very place that we are. As an advisor, it's the same thing. You need an advisor that's going to go through the steps with you as you mature through the years. And I've seen this so many times, and this applies to even me when I started out in the industry. I know this as well with you, which is we had simpler clients because I didn't have the appeal to a very complex scenario until I had years of experience. And now those simple clients are so easy or whatever it might be to me that they're also boring.
Well, and I actually had a conversation this week with, there are certain situations where a person can sit in front of me, tell me their situation, and I know exactly what the answers are and how it's going to work. And I don't even have to go do the math and run it through the software because I've seen it so many times. But that does a disservice to the person in front of me when I tell them that, because it sounds and appears simple. The reason I can do that is because I've done this for 32 years.
Exactly.
I can't just do it because this is my job, right? If you had sat down in front of me at year 10, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So you've got to still pay for my 32 years of experience. That's what you're paying for, not my time, because it's like anybody else. The more times you do something and repeat it, you can do it faster. That doesn't mean you should get paid less for doing it, right?
So you're 55 years old and you're finally starting to think about this stuff moving forward. You got to also think about what is it that you expect or need out of the end result of this. And one of those needs to be is, I know what the plan is. I understand how I'm going to get to the plan, and I understand why and the whole bit, which means you got some catching up to do.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And how long do you have to work so that you don't run out of money and can live the way you want? All the time, people come in making, 6 figures, but we can live on $36,000. Really? Start now. put everything but that into a different account, and let's make sure you can.
Here's some key numbers and ages that are going to come by as you're 55. 59 and a half, you should understand that age. You should probably understand the 55 mark as well. Age 62, age 65, age 67 at this point. I think all the 66 and somethings are out now.
Yeah,
close.
I think so, are pretty close.
Age 70.
Yep.
And age 73.
And 75.
And 75.
Oh, and 70 and a half.
70 and
because of QCDs.
Oh, boy.
Yep.
You need to consider these things because Social Security income can start at 62. Medicare age is 65. Your full retirement age in Social Security is 67. Your maximum age for the benefit to be its highest amount is age 70. The amount that you have to consider for required minimum distributions out of a qualified account, like a pre-tax account, like an IRA, is age 70 and a half.
Or 73 or 75, depending on when you were born.
Yep. As you're approaching this, instead of approaching it with worry, forget about the greed, because you're probably figuring out the idea that you're going to hang on to a $500 stock when you're gloating about it when it was at $6 does not fit in the current scenario, when now you should start be focused on what these numbers mean and what these dates mean. Now, the dates themselves, this is great. So as a planner, if you gave me 5 or 6 years, here's what I'm looking at. 55, he's got some equity in his house, let's say they owe some money of equal value. So they owe 300, they've got another 300 in equity, it's worth 600K. There's 300,000 bucks in the 401k for him, and there's 100,000 for her, and they've got kids moved out, they're done with college. This is perfect.
Yeah, it's a great time to plan.
Yes, because now we're talking about maximum earning age, your ability to fully fund up qualified accounts, your motivation should be higher. Your understanding of how to invest the money when it does go in there should be better, which means that it's also easier to now start to talk about the influences of the fear and the greed and then how to tolerate those. This is perfect, because then maybe at age 62, we can talk about, let's skip taking the Social Security payments, but let's still retire you because we put money into a Roth. We're going to get you the advanced premium tax credit for your health insurance until age 65. When Medicare kicks in and you've got a great HSA stacked up with cash with you and your wife, and we understand when you're going to take Social Security. Maybe you're going to take it at 67 and she's going to wait until her age of 70 or whatever it's going to be. And we figured this out, and guess what happens?
You can sleep at night.
Yeah, you're not going to forget about the Iran news.
No.
But you might approach it in a different light. You might to start to see things not from a land of plenty, but more in a land that has been planned to say, okay, this is when I'm going to harvest that. This is where I'm going to put it. Yeah. This is when I'm going to let this grow, and this is what I'm going to add to it, and this is what I expect out of what. And that visual approach of the better buckets, in fact, works, but it happens through consultation. It has never been a shortfall for any advisor that I've known that to gather a whole bunch of knowledge about a whole bunch of different things. But I have found that when they go too deep on one topic, they start to lose it. I'd rather have one that is good at all of these, but not great, really in particular at any of them, but knows when to hand that off to somebody that's great.
Absolutely.
Okay. You as the investor should be looking at it the same way. When my son came to me, he says, man, he could have just paid the tax. But the point is he's just said, can I get some advice? Now, he didn't pay me much for that advice. He paid me nothing. In fact, I think we should talk about that.
He paid you in love.
Yeah, he did. He's a great guy. But the point is that, ask for a little bit of help. You'll get the help. Some people will be excited to be able to help you. Some people should charge you. And you should start to accept it because you're the one with the goals. You're the one that's 55. You're the one that has this feeling of, am I there? Do I have enough? For example, isn't it worth it usually before somebody starts their Social Security payments, Alex, to first sit down and pay somebody to review their choices before they fill out the paperwork?
Absolutely.
Let's say it costs you $200 for the review. And you're talking about starting up $3,000 for the rest of your life worth of payments, and you're married and you haven't really asked the questions. Wouldn't you feel better if you found out your plan was good?
I would.
I'd pay $200 to know I'm okay. Why wouldn't you want to also learn how to protect a highly appreciated stock instead of focusing on just the greed? But now, how do you put that in check? Can you do it inexpensively? We can talk about that in the next hour. We can talk about the markets. We can talk about Social Security.
We can talk about transitioning from working to retirement.
Ooh, the loss of an identity.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say anymore. I just played golf. 979-59-MONEY. That's the phone number. You can find us at therealmoneypros.com. We're going to take a break, just a few minutes. We're going to come back. Find us live at therealmoneypros.com. We'll be right back.
The Real Money Pros is hosted by Brian Wiley and other team members of Tree City Advisors of Apollon. Tree City Advisors of Apollon is a DBA of Apollon.
You can call the program right now. You can text us right now, 979-596-6639. We can talk about markets, investing, estate planning, taxes, all of it. In fact, we've been talking all about all of those components just in our management team as well, deciding that we believe that we're probably going to bring tax preparation into our office simply because we need to have completion. We want to have it be done quickly, and we also think if we get done a lot less expensively, and we realize that the vast majority of the tax advice that is given to our clients is given by us.
The other thing is I can do much better tax planning for somebody when I have a copy of their taxes, especially a couple years worth, and trying to get people to remember to bring it in and or send it to us is very difficult. So if I was just in that flow to begin with, that would help a lot.
Yep. And that was kind of, it's always been my theory, which is, gosh, we want to be really good at what we do. We want to be able to offer Social Security advice to people or tax advice to people. But then the amount of time it takes to train. So we finally figured it out, which is, I got it. I have to be good enough to identify when to kick it over to the best person to get the result done. Otherwise, sometimes I can just handle it. Phone lines are open, 979-59-MONEY, and being patient on the line and staying on through the break. We really appreciate that. We have Cheryl calling out of Idaho. Cheryl, thanks for calling the Real Money Pros. What can we do for you?
Thank you.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So what's going on, Cheryl?
Hi. My husband passed away last year suddenly, and I am 64. I had a great job, but I've been in hospitality for the last 25 years, and after he died, I was just completely burnt out.
Fair. And condolences on that.
Basically, thank you. It was a surprise. From diagnosis to death was 30 days.
What?
So it was So it was a big deal. So I'm still kind of reeling from that, but I did basically retire. I came out to Idaho in November of last year. My son has an ADU on his property, so I basically don't have any living expenses at this point, which is good because I don't have any money. So I do have about – go ahead, sorry.
No, we're listening to your story. It's so unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear it. But on the other hand, we're glad you're bringing it to us because I think there's going to be a lot inside this story that people need to hear. So please continue.
Yeah. So I have about $75,000 in the bank from a house I sold in New Jersey. We didn't have a lot of equity in it. We had only been there about 3 years. So I have a little bit of money in the bank. I do have another home that I am preparing for sale, which should net me, after capital gains and everything else, because it's not a primary residence, should net me about $250,000. I am collecting Social Security. I have to sign up for Medicare next year when I turn 65 in January. And so basically I'm looking at that $250,000 and how to, honestly, I'm 64. I'm not going to build $1 million, but at least give me some supplemental to my Social Security. So what would be the best way, do you think, for me to go about that?
Wow. First of all, thanks for giving us all that all at once, because each one of those would have been a question and answer with most folks. So that was really nice to give us that summary. Your husband died at what age?
He was 75.
Okay, he was 75. So he was already fully receiving his Social Security payment?
He was.
Okay, got it. And now you have resumed that payment, or actually continued the payment, but you're going to continue that on. And did you have earned income during your working years, assuming you had actually had your own account or your own working income?
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm collecting my own.
Okay.
I'm not eligible to get survivor benefits until I turn 67. That's my full retirement age.
Well, I got to tell you.
Actually, you are. You're eligible at age 60 to get survivor benefits. And it might be worth
finding. Huh?
I beg your
Isn't
pardon.
it just a percentage? What I was
Not necessarily. No, you
I was
may be
reading
able
was
to receive exactly how much he was getting. So I would definitely make a phone call and or go online to find out, because age 60 is the age at which a widow or widower can apply for survivor benefits, and depending on when the other person started, it can reduce it a little bit, but there is a point where it's never going to get bigger, and you may have already hit that point where it is the max amount of a survivor benefit. So I would definitely make that phone call and or get online and check into that.
perfect. I will. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheryl,
but that's only one part.
You had mentioned that you're in Idaho, right?
I am.
Okay. And so you came out of another state. Is that where you're selling the house?
I'm selling a house in Montana. It is not my primary residence.
Okay.
It's been a rental for the last few years.
2 years?
It's been a rental for about 4 years.
4 years. Okay. Sorry. I thought I heard 2.
Okay. Yeah, because
then I got really excited.
Yeah. Well,
it's okay.
Yeah, no, I said for the last few. I said the last few. So yeah, I get it.
Okay. Sorry.
yeah, there's a step up in basis and things like that need to be talked about. Have you found a new accountant to work with in Idaho?
I have not. I have been looking. I had had a tax preparation done for this year. They did really well. Great. I am looking for kind of a financial advisor accountant. We've never had an accountant. My husband was super smart and he took care of all of that, except for savings. We had an expansive life. We traveled a lot and worked where we wanted to play. So.
Nice.
Well,
there's value in that.
I mean, my best suggestion right now is just finding out that you're in a state that is very close to us, of course, and we're actually, in fact, in it. In my heart, I'm just telling you right now, I think you ought to contact Alex, who is sitting right now next to me, because she has answers to the Social Security questions. She can help you through this. We've also, and Alex and I have worked together for how long ago did we start this?
Probably a little over 10
years now. And we've actually become the place where we've taken a lot of widows and helped them sort things out through the probates, through the entire process, and can bring the right professionals to the point where I've actually said this, which is if we have a woman that needs to be caught up on all of this stuff and get the right plans, we would actually send them to Alex specifically in our office. So if you are willing, then you can leave your number with our call screener, and she'll call you on Monday. I suppose you could take care of that and get that done. But for everybody to understand, there's this process that you have to go. So when your husband passed away, did he have a trust or a will in place?
We had a will. We had everything in place. There was no probate. New Jersey just basically looked at our paperwork and signed everything over to me. So there's nothing that's in probate. Everything is done on that end.
Good.
And you've gone through and done research on any potential life insurance policies that may have been out there, even the ones that are questionable. It looks like maybe you stopped paying for it anytime, something like that. You've called and found those?
We only had one life insurance through my job. It was very small for my spouse, and that covered his final expenses.
Okay, good. All right. And then is probate closed?
It is.
Okay, good.
Nice.
All right. Well, I mean, you're in a position of control where it's nice because you could actually sit down and start getting to work on making these decisions, whereas oftentimes we're waiting for title changes, probate authorizations to be made by the court to allow things to be changed and so on. So you're in a good spot from that standpoint. It sounds like he left you well. It's just now we've got to figure out a way to make it work well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I always wanted to sell the house in Montana once we lived out of state. And he's like, no, that's all I have to leave you. So just hold on. Because I tend to, knee jerk. And now a year later, I'm looking and saying, well, shit, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to say that. Should I have quit my job? I had a good job, but it was a very, very stressful. Hospitality is like one of the most stressful positions. And I was completely burnt out.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's full blown.
Yeah, you got to take care of yourself.
But I just want to make smart decisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if
Yeah.
anything, get
I
the
just wanted
Social
to be
Security
smart.
part of it fixed, and I get that fixed right away.
The other thing that gets missed a lot is make sure that you are getting a step up in basis on that Montana property to when he passed away, so that you're not going to have to pay gains on
and secondly,
that portion.
Yeah, and some research maybe on if extra things were actually purchased for the property, such as you put a new roof on it, like you might be able to increase that and save yourself some tax money. But Cheryl, I hope we talk to you again. This is Real Money Pros. We'll be right back.
Businesses today face a barrage of challenges. They hunt for top talent, the search for the right benefits package, and the ever-rising tide of healthcare rates. In putting together the right team to run your HR...
All sensitive stuff, very much so. And something that's just been a part of our job. And the way that I feel is, well, she called the program, we got to get on with the questions. Otherwise, start hearing the story. And I want to hear the story. I'd like to know the details. And sometimes that it does adjust the plan itself, and it needs to be expressed. But this is a fact that most couples will go through.
Well, somebody's going to die.
I mean,
all of
unless
us
they
are going to
both go,
die.
unless they both go at the same time, which,
That
we
happens.
both fell
That does
asleep
happen.
at the same time and didn't wake up. That'd be great. But the fact is that this is going to happen, so there's got to be some sort of a plan. Now,
Yes.
between couples, it's kind of the question that gets avoided.
Well, and from the person who sits in here a lot of times with a widow, because statistically the wife is going to live longer, and not always, but quite often they do. I want to say to you guys that are doing this on your own and running everything, that's fantastic. But if you are always talking about how you're saving all these fees and you've got it down, and then you don't have a plan in place, and your wife isn't involved, she comes in and she feels like she is supposed to do what you did because it saves so much money, with no idea how to do it. And so a lot of times you leave her in a really bad spot because she has guilt if she doesn't do it herself. So have a plan for the person who's going to stay alive to continue what you've built and started if you're self-investing and creating your income plan, please.
So the news, like it sounds, and that's a situation. We've actually had a client that went through another similar situation with this. And in that one, in fact, was, I know that you're going to know who I'm talking about. It was a doctor, pancreatic cancer, and
it went pretty fast.
It just went fast. It was horrible, actually, and it caught the entire family by surprise. And there was a lot of things that were done in the right ways, and then some things that needed some cleaning up, but it was all done with great intentions.
Absolutely.
The other part of it is we had a spouse that was there to take care of the family, and that was the purpose. What had happened was it was sudden.
Very sudden.
I have things right now I can tell you that I need to change in my estate plan.
Oh, I bet most people do, unless you literally just finished.
Cobbler's kids have no shoes, right? And so I am, honestly, if I could not talk to another estate planning attorney soon, that would be great, because we do it on a professional level. I'm doing it on a family level. And now to me, to suck it up and go do it on a personal level, I just don't care to have the conversation. So what I'm doing is I'm leaving my family at risk of having to make decisions that they may not know either technically how to do it, or they may not know my intentions.
Well, and we are currently redoing ours this year because the kids are both at the ages they'd have got all the money anyway. So time to fix it. But the other thing is those other documents, the end of life, like who decides if it's time to take you off support? Who decides all those things? I think it's really important if you don't have a document, but it might fall to your kids, tell them what you want so they know they're not guessing. I mean, what a terrible situation to guess what your parent would have wanted.
So I was in a meeting with my wife not long ago, and it was in front of a professional that was there to give her advice. I was just there kind of the support and listening to it. But every time we'd ask a question, the professional on the other side of the table, even when my wife asked the question, looked at me with the answer and would kind of explain everything looking at me. And it started to bother me. I'm thinking, well, she's the one that's got the questions. Why are you not answering back to her? And I think what it was either she thought she needed to impress me, or maybe she thought I was the one making the ultimate decision, which she is completely wrong about that, because Sunny's perfectly capable of making her decisions on this one. Now, this happens with couples frequently with their financial advisors, where a married couple sitting in front of, let's say, me, and she asks a question, but he asks most of the questions, and he, like, maybe I know that he makes all the decisions, so I keep answering back to him because he's going to be the one that gives me the business or whatever it's going to be. This is really poor practice.
That's terrible.
The advisor should, in fact, be trying to catch the spouse up all the way up to the limits of what the spouse is interested in knowing about, but making sure that they are as current as possible all the way through the process. Secondly, I've always suggested that the advisor, when let's say the husband keeps showing up for the meetings and she keeps finding reasons to not show up, find something to bring her in so you can get her up to speed.
Yeah, I don't want to be anybody's other woman.
And this is the reason for it. We had Cheryl's phone call, and sounds like her husband really had his stuff together. He planned well. They had great things during the marriage, but now she's got to try to figure out where to pick up the pieces and to get caught up on a system that has got exponentially more complex during the time of the marriage where she wasn't looking at it.
Yeah.
So that's it. So you match make them, but better yet, for you out there in a married situation that you're handling all these things or you're handling a lot of things, either bring them up to speed, find somebody that's going to take care of it for them, or make notes.
Both would be great, or all three would be great.
Yeah.
There are several couples that I meet with annually, and we just review where they're at, what's going on, decisions that have been made, and talk about where everything is, truly with the intent that if something happens to the husband, I'm pretty current on the situation and the wife can just come right in.
My son and I are working on a car that he and I built up together, and it's got some specialized parts in it, and I said, I got to add some oil to it. And he says, hey, you got that oil up here? It's in the cabinet. I said, well, you can't. We got to find the book because it's got specific oil that I'm not changing, and I don't know where the book is. I finally find the book. And as if I was passing on to Cooper, I said, look, here's the hydraulic fluids, the superchargers fluid and all this stuff, and motor oil, and I'm using this brand and all this other stuff. And I said, I don't even know why it matters. But anyway, if something happens, Coop, all of it's right here in this book. You got to open up. Now, that's okay because I'm telling him where it is, but I'm not telling Sunny where it is. I didn't tell her. Meaning I got to at some point say, yeah, if somebody ever needs to buy that car, there is a complete book of everything that's been changed on that car. It's all in there.
Yeah.
To include specs on which fluids to use, the whole bit. The buyer would like to know that. In fact, it would even maximize the selling price to be able to show that you have that. Now, somebody's got to know it's there.
Absolutely, or it does no good.
It does no good otherwise. So what is the plan? I actually do a password sharing app, by the way.
Remind us of that one. We were talking about it the other day.
I don't know that you should use this. I use SecureSafe, but I think the Apple Password Manager is perfectly good. And I think
and you can put a beneficiary on there.
The Google one is perfectly good. But the point more than anything is to use one and to let somebody know how to get it. I liked SecureSafe at the time because I also pay for a little extra service that they keep searching the public database. Because you imagine, let's say I ended up dead. How would they know? And maybe there's a family sitting in a probate court saying, we can't get into this account. We don't know where his accounts are. And so it'd be nice if somebody sent, hey, we've tried to get a hold of this user. You are saved as the backup person. And they give them all of the information so they have access to everything.
Be handy.
Okay. I do that still. That is a good practice that I wish right now several clients would have done. I can think of several people.
Off the top of my head.
Yep. Right off the top of my head, that had they done that, it would have helped us out quite a bit. Otherwise, you're waiting for that rare mailing to go to their home to show up. Oh, they had an E-Trade account? What? They had
but mailings don't go anymore. You don't even get your end of your tax forms in the mail.
You're just hoping that something odd at some point would have been sent to their home, and that's really the way it's done. Otherwise, you do the responsible thing. You pay somebody. You get the plan done. You make sure you understand it. You maintain the documents. You show them where the documents are, how they're going to access it, but usually that's just not the case. This is Real Money Pros 979-59-MONEY. I'm Brian. That's Alex. We'll be right back.
As we age, managing our finances can become increasingly complex with ever-changing tax laws, estate planning, insurance needs, and investment environments. At Apollon Wealth Management,
Text the program 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. For a deeper dive, go to therealmoneypros.com. Learn about the Better Bucket system. Interact with us. Send messages, questions. Fiduciary-only advisors will then reply back to you and may ask you some more questions, just like we did with Cheryl, our caller, but maybe they can get the answer right to you. But in every case, it's going to be at the best we can do it. Why do we do it? Well,
everybody learns.
I was going to say, because that's what we do with our spare time. Wait, there's no spare time. This is a sponsor-supported program. So we're paid to do that as advisors, but we're also paid during the week to work with individual clients. So we do it for that reason. We also enjoy sharing the knowledge that we get. The other part of it is I've actually watched clients go through the process of going from their identity being focused on, I mean, they're walking in with their uniform on for 20 years and then they retire and then they're still wearing their company shirt for 2 more years as they're golfing, and that's still their identity. And they're...
You know why? It's because we ask people what they do. We don't ask people who they are. That's a cultural fail.
So then you got to figure, then they don't know. They go golfing, and their first conversations are usually going to be about what they did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
The experts they are, they're establishing credibility.
Yeah, and it's hard to let some of that go. The other thing that's really difficult, I had someone that came in last week, and we are figuring out their income plan for retirement. They're going into it, and we were talking budgets and how much do you need. And they forgot that we're not putting money into savings out of that budget that they're getting every month.
So there's an identity.
So they were planning to put the money into I mean, they needed more than they said they needed more because of the amount they're putting into savings every paycheck.
Because their identity was a contributor, a saver. Their job was to work and then put money into the 401k. So that's an identity crisis.
I've been putting $500 a paycheck into savings, so that's part of my expenses. Well, not in retirement, it's not. We've already saved, and we're using it.
So you don't just flip that switch and go from I'm a saver mentality, now I'm a spender mentality. That's got to be a hard switch to flip.
Well, and I hear from people all the time it's really difficult, and different people address it differently. I'd love to know some different ways people have dealt with that. If it was an easy thing, if it was something that took time, did it take 6 months? Did it take literally a week? Was one person in the household, was it easier for them than the other? And they had to kind of drag them along, kicking and screaming. There are people I meet with every year, and the wife walks in and says, tell him it's okay for me to buy new carpet.
Yeah, share your experience. I'm curious, how do people actually have that? What is the feeling for you when you go from using what you've saved, or is there no difference? Do you look at wait, I'm not even connected to my finances, never really have been. I just know what comes in and I look at the balance each month. Has that not changed? Or do you find yourself that you're now more connected to your expenses? And would you tell your old self something different? So just for fun, call the program and just tell us that experience. 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639, or text it to us. But how has it changed the way that you think about your finances, or maybe there's no change at all?
Yeah, maybe.
Let's get to somebody did text somebody, and I just noticed this. Sorry, it took us a while. They sent it in the last hour. This text message came to our call-in phone line. It says, 1, do you think that with all the people being taken off of the SSI immigration and catching all the fraud that has been happening, being stopped, will make this fund more solvent? 2, I'm at age 67, still working, and at full retirement age. How much money can I make per year if I decide to take SSI?
Okay, so first of all, SSI is not Social Security. It's supplemental security income that is in addition to Social Security for people who are blind, disabled, etc., or have a very, very low Social Security payment. So, but what I think you mean is actually Social Security. Once you hit full retirement age, you can make as much as you want, with the exception of the first year that you file if you're at FRA. So if you turned 67 in 2026, there is some limitations going into it, but it's a pretty high number. After that, you make $1 million a year. It doesn't matter. So it's only early filing that says you have a restriction. And that's because they don't want you to take it if you don't need it. So if you're full retirement age and you want to take it even if you're still working, go ahead. Now, here's the thing I'm going to tell you, though. Don't put it into your budget, because then when you turn off your paycheck, if you're not able to replace all of that, you're suddenly going to have a really big reduction in income.
I was struggling here at the opening on it. I understand what he's saying. He's talking about SSI, the just what you're talking about, the supplemental income, in it being basically overused by illegal immigrants or whatever it might be. And then I just did a quick search on that, and there's been a few studies on it, but it's roughly $70-something billion per year improperly paid. That makes up less than 1% of all payments. So that in itself wouldn't be what would bring the program down. So set that aside. Now let's get to the questions, which we just did. But on the third one, he says, should I start taking SSI and invest it or wait? Concern is, will it be there at age 70? So there's confusion here.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, I'd say wait if you don't need it, because between full retirement age and age 70, your benefit increases a minimum of 8%. It might be even more if you're still working, based on if these are your highest earning years. But I would say wait. Also, if you take it while you're still working, it might be taxed at a higher rate than it would later. This is a payment that truly, at this where you're at, is going to last in your entire life. And if you do have a survivor, you want that survivor benefit to be as high as possible.
So Gabby, thanks for the message. She had one last question. She said, if I take SSI, let's just say if I take Social Security, not SSI, can I still be enrolled in my company insurance?
That would be a Medicare question. And depending on the size of your company, the answer is yes. So there you go. If you got more questions, send them. You can also send us a text at 979-596-6639. That's 979-59-MONEY. Now, that is one way that the politicians have polarized the population, which is to talk about how to make changes to the Social Security system, but then to also focus on certain things to invoke something. Yes. And that to invoke something is either going to be like fear or anger. Now, emotions.
Yep. In this case, both are emotions. But not all the facts have actually been gleaned at that point. So would we say that the biggest risk to SSI or Social Security system or SSDI or any of that is going to be the fraud? Well, it depends on the extent of the fraud. And 70 billion is a big number, but if it's less than 1%, it's immaterial. So then you have to go down to what's going to be more efficient. It's kind of like when you hear somebody getting sued and then they settled out of court with some specified amount being paid, almost as if it sounds like they admitted guilt. But then you'll hear that, listen, we looked at it and it was going to cost us more to fight it than to just pay what it was going to cost to go away. That is actually the conundrum. That is the true conundrum when you look at any of these programs with fraud or even inefficiencies being the problem with it. Because at some point you may say to fix the problem costs more money than the problem itself. Right. And so I don't know exactly how what the extent of fraud with SSDI or SSI, SS, whatever, Social Security or Medicare or any of that is. Other than right now, from what I understand, it's not so much to the point where it's worth scrapping the entire programs. And I don't think that really is the question. The question is how do you make these programs work by minimizing and still minimizing fraud? I just have a hard time thinking that we can't minimize it more with all the available technologies that we have to be able to track somebody's, their IRS. Everything. Yeah, everything. It's already there. It's already there, and I don't like it anyway. 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. We were going to get back to something. Okay. But it wasn't that. Okay. Do you recall what it was? No, you don't. Apparently, you don't either. Nope. It was something about Social Security. My son's, no, it was an employer side of it. Was it the employee side of it? Wasn't the limits. Did you get the limits? Yeah, 184,500. And it was like 176,000 last year. Okay, but Medicare doesn't have a limit. You still pay the Medicare portion for the entire amount of your income. Okay, what we're talking about is when you pay the Social Security portion of your employee tax that goes into Social Security. So you pay it from zero income, that first dollar, all the way through 184,500. Okay, and then it will no longer be paid out of your paycheck. Correct. Okay. That is the tax that's paid in the Social Security system. And I just have a question for everyone. Why is there a limit?
Well, there's also a benefit limit. So even regardless of how much you've put in, there's a max amount you can draw monthly.
Do you support the limit or do you not support the limit? 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. Maybe it's irony. Maybe it's not. But I can tell you, this is the one area where I actually think that the beginning should actually start there. Mm-hmm. Those are the people that might not need the payments, whereas the other ones, they do. And they're actually getting other sorts of tax credits now that maybe they wouldn't need, such as the advanced premium tax credit,
right.
Such as, meaning this is the needier crowd. What are your thoughts? This is the Real Money Pros. I'm Brian Wiley. This is Alexander Lundgren. We'll take a break and be right back.
Businesses today face a barrage of challenges. They hunt for top talent, the search for the right benefits package, and the ever-rising tide of healthcare rates. In putting together the right team to
sponsors, who supports this program, these are the same companies that we also will send our clients to because we've had experiences with them. We are also now fine to promote them. Of course, yeah, they pay us for it. That is how we actually have them support and sponsor the program. So you got an open microphone. Josh, will you please just shut that off? And it kind of helps us out a little bit here. Phone lines are open, 979-59-MONEY. That's 979-596-6639. What we failed to talk about, and I want to talk about right now, which is the notification process. So this is often, you got to imagine when somebody passes away, you're grieving, and then you've got things that you need to do. You've got to go get death certificates. You've got to notify employers, the Social Security system. You may even not notified somebody and then notice money left in an account, or maybe you don't even have access to it, don't know where to go.
You don't know if the power bill's coming automatically out of the checking account or not.
And do you actually have the ability to use and control the checking account? You've got to see somebody, and this can get really overwhelming very quickly, as you can only imagine. And so there's a lot of really simple things that could be done and put into place, but let's just talk about one thing in somewhat of a detail, which is, let's imagine your husband, or actually Cheryl's husband, was receiving Social Security. What is she to do now about that money that was being received? What's the process?
So the process is that actually Social Security should have been notified by the mortuary that her husband passed, which will basically make them come pull the final payment out of the account. So know that's going to happen. Be prepared. Always, because they supposedly pay in arrears, but when the person passes away, they're paying in advance.
Yeah, so
just know that they're confused.
Imagine they died today, so April 25th. They're going to take out April's payment. That money's it's not like you earned 25 days worth of that payment.
It's so stupid.
Well, but anyway, so that will.
So they do that. Yep. Then the next thing is that the spouse, Cheryl, should contact them because if his payment is higher, she's actually entitled to the higher of the two payments, even if she was already drawing. If the spouse is not already drawing, they still are, if they are 60 or older, entitled to a survivor benefit and can find out if that amount is higher than their own benefit. We have one gal who she's taking the survivor benefit to delay her own personal one until age 70 because then it will be higher than the survivor one. This when there's a death and a survivor benefit, it's the only way you can do that anymore. We used to have a file and suspend. We don't. The only way to do it now is as a survivor benefit. In addition, if you were married to somebody for 10 years or more, and I don't mean 9 years and 11 months, 10 years or more, and you are single and they pass away, you may be eligible for a survivor benefit. So be aware of that. It's a lot.
It is a lot. Okay, so now imagine you call the Social Security office, you sit online.
Yeah, for an hour and a half, and they still tell you they don't have anybody and call back tomorrow.
Yeah, and of course you did this because you saw the amount of money that was put into the account, leave the account, so you're finally calling in to figure out, what do I got to do? And so you start asking questions, and you get the person on the other end of the line, which now just remember, these people are trained by the Social Security system. They understand the system. They know where to look, and, well, they're supposed to. This is the reason why you're calling them.
Right. But they
This
are
is your
not
perception.
authorized to give you advice. They are actually specifically told not to give you advice, only to answer your questions. And they won't tell you what questions to ask.
So what does that mean? That means that if you're Cheryl in this case, and I don't know in her particular instance, but let's imagine that she's like, what we've seen a lot of is they don't know what to do. They just know that they're calling a line where the experts are on the other end of it. So they sit there and they're asking questions saying, okay, well, he passed away. And they say, okay, we're sorry about that. And we already noticed the payment's gone out. And they say, well, what do we do? And they say, well, you got to fill out this paperwork and you continue to receive your payments. This is all factual in right. But the person on the other side of the line is not going to say, wait, but do you have your own account with Social Security? Do you have a benefit? Are you receiving your benefit? Oh, so in that case, no, don't file that paperwork. You should do this. They cannot give you advice. And this is actually part of their rules.
Yeah.
However,
and it's a
if you
problem.
ask the question, then they will answer it. And they're supposed to be correct with their answer, which in some cases they're not.
They're not.
But let's forget about that. But meaning you've got to know the right questions to ask. And this is really why I strongly suggest that somebody has an expert flank them on the phone call and you even let them know. Say, hey, there's two of us in the room. We're on speakerphone. The concern is for this person and the expert is sitting here. And everybody will feel great about it. And that way everybody can ask the questions that need to be asked.
Because you can't ask a question for something you don't know about that is even a thing. What you don't know, you don't know.
You don't know. And so to alleviate these type of issues is that when you're still alive, obviously to sit down and to transfer off, here's what's going to happen. If anything happens, I want you to contact Alex, and Alex should be your first contact if something were to unexpectedly happen. She knows where everything is. She knows how to access everything. She knows the estate plan. She knows how to work. Okay, that's great. But maybe you don't have an Alex. Maybe you've got somebody else. You've got to start purging some information to them.
Yeah.
If you're one of the older parents now, the grandparent age, a great-grandparent age, that has not talked about, let's talk to your kids that are now in their 60s and told them, who's got power of attorney over finances, you are leaving them in a quagmire, even though you want your family to continue loving each other after you go.
Absolutely.
Start divulging information. You think it might bring out greed? Well, you're better off to notice it now. Because maybe you need to adjust your plan. If it looks like there's going to be problems, if you suspect it, start to plan for it.
Yeah, and if you think your kids are going to fight, make the person who's in charge of things a third party.
Here's a rule. I heard this years ago. I don't remember who said it. You have to love your children equally, but you don't have to give them things equally.
No, and if the oldest kid is the irresponsible one, don't make them be the person in charge of everything when you die.
Yep, that's a great one to receive the IRAs with restrictions and the illiquid investments and all that stuff. That type of planning is really important. It can actually be. It's not going to be a perfect thing. Somebody is going to lose somebody and have to deal with that. It'd be nice if they could focus on the grieving.
Absolutely.
And not
Every
focus
time.
on the processing of now what to do. But you bring in the other parts of it, which I had mentioned this to Cheryl during the call. I said, you got to do a little research. Go to your state's unclaimed property report page and put the names in there and see if there's something there. Because insurance company, if they owed a death benefit and they can't find the decedent or their family, they will go and put it on deposit.
That's how we got my dad's.
Yep, you'll find it. Turns out, even in our state, I did a silly search, found like $3, and of course they want. Do you want to donate it to the something fund? Yeah, the same fund that exceeded my money. Yeah, you know what? They'll send a check.
Yeah.
Call the insurance companies. Here's one. Older folks. This one actually applied. Some of them had Prudential stock. Do you remember this?
Yes.
We're like, why do you own that? I don't know. I had some stock from an insurance policy, and they sent me the stocks. Now I own it, and I'm like, that's all you got. In often cases, we found those Prudential policies, opened them up, called them, and found out that they still had a basic life policy. And in some cases, we're paying $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, and nobody knew it was there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That type of stuff happens. Yep. And because I had learned that, I just got in the habit of calling any associated life insurance company that seemed to have been in the mixture of that family's lives.
Yeah.
And just asking them, I called them, I said, will you do a search by social, see if any data comes up? If it does, then tell us what we're going to have to come up with to figure out what data we need to come up with. And that has happened many times where we find things come out of the woodwork.
Yeah. There's oftentimes stuff there. Go check your parents if they've passed. Check their names every place they lived.
And start talking about this stuff. And if you're leery because you're worried about greed or fear, then that is an indication that you should probably go a little bit further in depth with your planning, probably with a professional, figuring out who's going to know these things. But somebody needs to know them, and you got to transfer that on. Have a password manager. Give somebody access to your emails or something, or require custodians to send one document per year. And the one way to do that one would be the trusted contact information document. Have them send it out via paper to you. It might be the irritant that you get in your mailbox, but at least be happy that you got it, tear it up, throw it away. But it'll show up a year after your death or 2 years after your death. Maybe your family will find it that way.
Absolutely.
Tough to have these conversations, but these are the conversations that your advisor probably should be having with you. We're willing to have them. If you want to find a great advisor, we know them. Go to therealmoneypros.com. Alex, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
I'm Brian Wiley. This is The Real Money Pros. Have a great day.